So if you go back to like the 1920s, having this really rigid top-down plan was essentially the ultimate secret to corporate success. You build the perfect blueprint, you pass it down the chain of command, and people
Yeah.
just execute it.
Right. It was all about total compliance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today,
Yeah.
I mean, sticking stubbornly to a top-down plan is probably the #1 reason that otherwise smart, totally capable teams just, completely implode under pressure.
It really is the great paradox of modern work, isn't it? Because you put these brilliant people together, you give them really clear goals, but the second the pressure actually hits, like a major variable changes or a deadline shifts, the communication just evaporates.
Oh, totally. The group chat goes dark,
Yes.
information gets siloed. Suddenly it feels like it's just every person for themselves. And all those hard-earned lessons from, your last project, they're instantly forgotten. And look, if you're listening to this, you've been there. I know you have.
We all have, yeah.
Right. And today we are doing a deep dive into an architectural framework from our sources that promises a way out of that exact mess. We're going to be exploring this thing called the Diamond process cycle.
It's a fascinating model.
It really is. And our mission today is to figure out how moving away from those industrial era management habits and moving into what they call a living cadence can basically save your team from burnout. And more importantly, how it actually improves the people who are doing the work.
Yeah.
Because I'm always looking for ways to avoid information overload, right?
Right. Well, and the stakes here are actually incredibly high. Because what we are really talking about underneath it all is relational intelligence, or RQ.
Okay, RQ, not EQ.
Right, not
Yeah.
EQ. People confuse them all the time. EQ, emotional intelligence, is about understanding your own emotions, having empathy, but RQ is structural.
Okay.
It's the ability to actually maintain trust, engage in open dialogue, and repair a professional relationship after a conflict, but within a system. I mean, you can't just be trustworthy on a motivational poster and expect it to hold up when the deadline gets tight.
Right, because when the literal building is on fire, nobody is stopping to read the motivational poster in the break room.
Precisely. Relational intelligence requires an actual architecture. It needs a structure to be practiced in.
But to understand the solution we're unpacking today, I think we first have to understand why the tools you, the listener, are probably using right now are actually setting you up to fail.
Yeah, we have to look at the root cause.
Right, the root cause of that team breakdown, which really boils down to just an outdated organizational geometry.
Yes, the text calls it the industrial hangover.
The industrial hangover. I love that.
Because our current management models, they are directly inherited from the factory floor. Work is imagined as this very rigid, linear sequence, right? Plan, then execute, then control.
I mean, I get that. But hierarchies do exist for a reason, right? Like,
Yeah.
if there is a literal crisis, I don't want a balanced field of distributed attention. I just want one person pointing to the exit and telling everyone exactly what to do.
Well, sure, that is a crucial distinction. In a true immediate crisis, like a literal fire, or a sudden safety hazard top-down command is absolutely necessary.
Right.
But complex project management isn't a singular crisis. It is a continuous navigation of changing variables, that linear, plan, execute, control sequence. It worked perfectly when environments were highly stable.
When you had all the information up front.
Exactly. You plan the work, you work the plan, you control the output. But modern complex projects almost never enjoy those stable conditions. Information is always changing.
It makes me think of navigation, honestly. Using the whole plan, execute, control method for a modern project is like trying to use a printed MapQuest map from like 1995 to navigate a really bustling modern city today.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right, because you printed the directions at home, that's your plan. You get in the car and start driving, that's execute. But a linear model assumes that literally nothing changes once you start moving.
It doesn't account for reality.
Exactly. It doesn't account for a sudden road closure or a pop-up parade. If you just put your head down and execute the printed plan, you are going to drive your car straight into a construction trench.
And that is the perfect mechanism to explain what goes wrong. And the organizational fallout from driving into that trench is severe. The text points out that when you rely on a linear, control-heavy model in a really complex world, you end up with highly defensive behavior and fragmented accountability.
Well, yeah, because mechanically, if the plan comes from the top and the plan fails because reality changed, the people executing it just point at the printed map. They just say, well, I just did what I was told. My part of the map was right. Talk to the guy who drew it.
Exactly. Accountability shatters. And this ties into this brilliant observation we see in the sources from Peter Senge. He's an organizational thinker who points out that sustained success requires an organization to become a learning system.
Learning system. Okay.
Yes. But because of these outdated linear models, many project environments operate merely as delivery systems. They just measure the output, the delivery. But they completely overlook the quality of the relationships and the actual learning that makes future outputs possible.
And I think a big part of why we are stuck as delivery systems is the literal shape we use to draw organizations.
Yeah.
We inherited this hierarchical worldview. I mean, we literally draw our companies as pyramids.
Yeah.
You know,
We do.
the assumption built into a pyramid is that coordination only improves when information flows all the way up to a single apex, and then instructions flow all the way down to the base.
But today, the base of the pyramid, of people doing the actual work on the ground, they often have way more real-time critical information than the people at the top.
Right.
So if the linear pyramid fails when reality shifts, what do? We have to rotate our perspective, literally.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this visual shift is really the core of this whole deep dive.
Okay.
If you look at an organizational pyramid from the side, it's just a triangle, right?
Yeah.
Broad at the bottom, pointed at the top.
Right.
But the framework we're exploring from the source diagrams suggests rotating that shape 45 degrees.
Yes, you shift it.
The apex shifts to the side, the base shifts, and suddenly you get a diamond. But, like, what are we actually doing mechanically to the flow of work when we do that?
Mechanically, you are removing the single bottleneck. In a pyramid, every difficult decision has to travel up a single vertical line to a boss, who then has to send a command back down.
Which takes forever.
Exactly. In a diamond structure, the widest part, the center, represents your cross-functional team collaborating horizontally. The 4 points of the diamond aren't bosses. They are interfaces with different realities of the project. So information, responsibility, and learning, they circulate through the whole system rather than just waiting for an instruction from the top.
I mean, that sounds great in theory, but how does this actually work in practice? If we don't have a top-down boss dictating every single step, how does the work actually move?
Well, the Diamond framework maps this out as an 8-stage continuous cycle. It starts familiar enough. First, you define the task. Second, planning. Third, development. Fourth, implementation.
Okay, so that is the standard left-to-right motion we are all used to.
Exactly.
You establish the problem, you align your resources, build the prototype, and then you just ship it. That's where the assumptions of the plan finally meet the cold, hard evidence of reality, right? Implementation.
Yes, but then we hit the back half of the cycle, and this is where the geometry changes everything.
Yeah.
After implementation, we don't just start a new task. We move to step 5, which is assessment, then step 6, reflection, step 7, lessons, and finally, step 8, character.
Okay, wait. I have to stop you there. Task, plan, develop, implement, assess, reflect, lessons. All of that makes perfect logical sense for a project management framework.
Right.
But that final step, character. Wait, character sounds like a moral judgment.
Right.
What is a word like character doing in a professional management framework? Are we shipping software, or are we running like a philosophy class here?
I know, it sounds unusual, but it is the exact point where this model diverges from almost everything else out there. I mean, there are plenty of other cyclical frameworks.
Right, like agile or whatever.
Or take the OD loop used in the military. Orient, decide, act. It's highly effective for rapid tactical situations, but tactical loops only seek faster, better outcomes.
Just better widgets, faster
Yeah.
delivery of the widgets.
But the Diamond process cycle seeks better outcomes and better people. Repeated participation in this specific healthy cycle develops professional maturity, it develops judgment and trustworthiness.
Oh, interesting.
That is what is meant by character in this context. It is not a moral judgment from a manager saying you're a bad person. It is the systemic resilience that builds up in a team when they continuously act, learn, and adapt together.
Okay, so can you give me an example of what character actually looks like mechanically in a workplace?
Sure. Character is the junior developer who, because they have been through this cycle safely so many times, now has the confidence to pull the emergency cord and stop a major product launch on a Friday afternoon because they spotted a critical bug.
Wow. Yeah, because in a pyramid, they might just keep quiet out of fear of the boss.
Exactly. In the Diamond, their character, Their professional courage has been systematically developed. The next cycle begins at a higher level of capability because the people themselves have evolved.
I love that. Systemic resilience.
Yeah.
Not just being a good person, but to understand how we actually build that kind of character, I think we need to look at the engine of this whole growth process. Having laid out the 8 steps, I want to zoom in on the specific pivot point that makes this so different. It's the transition between step 5 assessment and step 6 reflection.
This is a really critical distinction in the document. The framework leans heavily on Donald Schoen's concept of reflective practice.
Reflective practice.
Yes, which is the ability of professionals to think critically about their actions both during and after an experience.
But, I mean, most corporate teams stop at assessment, right? They finish a project, they have the big post-mortem meeting, they look at the metrics. But assessment and reflection are not the same thing, are they?
Not at all. Assessment is entirely about measurement. It asks, what happened? What were the sales numbers? Did we hit the deadline? What is the raw data? Assessment just gives you the facts.
Right.
But reflection is what creates understanding. Reflection asks, why did this happen? What assumptions did we make back at the planning stage that proved completely false during implementation?
Let me try an analogy here. Let's say assessment is like being a basketball player, and you look up at the scoreboard at the end of the 4th quarter, and you see that you lost by 20 points.
Okay.
The data is clear. You know exactly what happened. But reflection is what happens the next morning. It's sitting down in the locker room, turning on the game tape, and painstakingly watching the plays break down to figure out exactly why the defense collapsed.
Yes.
Assessment is the scoreboard. Reflection is the game tape.
That is spot on. And what's fascinating here is how institutionalizing that locker room space fundamentally changes the nature of governance.
How so?
Well, if you just rely on the scoreboard on assessment, your governance is based entirely on control and punishment. You miss the metric, therefore you fail.
Right, you're in trouble.
But when you mandate reflection, governance becomes the design of repeatable conditions that allow healthy behavior to emerge naturally.
So you are creating a space where people aren't afraid to admit they messed up a play. Because the goal of the meeting isn't punishment, it's learning.
Exactly. It's ensuring the team always comes back to watch the tape together safely. This is how that relational intelligence we talked about earlier moves from being just a nice aspiration to an actual ingrained habit.
Right. Because if you know you are going to watch the tape together on Friday, without fear of being fired just for making a mistake, you are much more likely to be honest about why the play broke down in the first place.
And from that honest reflection, you generate the next step. Lessons. Practical knowledge to improve future decisions. And from applying those lessons repeatedly, you build character.
Okay, so this beautiful 8-step cycle task, implement, assess, reflect, character, all of that, this explains the internal rhythm of a team. It's the engine. But team does not exist in a vacuum, right? Like, what happens when the economy crashes halfway through a project? A really good locker room culture can't fix a bankrupt company.
No, it can't. Which is exactly why the framework doesn't stop at the internal team. If we pull back, the visual diagrams from our sources show this internal 8-step cycle sitting inside a much larger encompassing diamond.
Right, the gray diamond.
Yes. This outer diamond represents the external realities acting on the team. It has 4 outer points, and they contain 9 specific environmental factors.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think, because this is where the theoretical framework hits the messy real world. Walk me through these 4 outer points.
Okay, let's start at the top of the outer diamond. Awareness and politics. Then on the right, we have economics and anticipation.
Okay.
At the bottom, physical environment, accountability, and abundance. And on the left, adaptability and the social milieu.
Okay, that is a lot of terminology all at once. Let's ground this. If the inner 8-step cycle is like the living organism of a coral reef, the polyps constantly building, assessing, reflecting, and growing, then this outer diamond is the entire ocean ecosystem surrounding it. Right?
That is a much more accurate way to look at it than a simple mechanical analogy, yeah. An organization must adapt its internal structure to survive external pressures.
So let's look at the top node, awareness and politics. In a corporate setting, I feel like politics usually just means backstabbing. What does it actually mean here?
Here, awareness and politics represent the shifting winds of organizational priorities and stakeholder interests. It's the ocean currents in your reef analogy. A team can't just put their heads down and build a product. They have to maintain awareness of what the executive board actually wants right now and navigate the politics of getting buy-in.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
What about the right node? Economics and anticipation. That's not just, do we have the budget, is it?
No, the inclusion of anticipation is the key there. Economics is the current water temperature, your available capital today. Anticipation is the ability to forecast market trends.
Uh,
If your internal team is reflecting beautifully on last week's data, but literally no one is looking at the economic forecast for next year,
yeah.
you're going to build a perfect product for a market that just no longer exists.
Oh, wow. Okay. Then at the bottom, we have physical environment, accountability, and abundance. Now, the physical environment is obvious: supply chains, literal geography, the seafloor your reef is built on. But what do accountability and abundance mean in this specific context?
Well, accountability here refers to proving your ROI to the outside world. It's regulatory compliance, safety standards. You are accountable to the laws of physics and the laws of the land.
Right. And abundance.
Abundance is a fascinating addition. It challenges teams to look at external resources not just as scarce things to hoard, but as systems to leverage.
Oh, like how?
Like, how can we tap into an abundance of community knowledge or open source tools rather than feeling like we have to build absolutely everything from scratch in-house?
I really love that shift in mindset. It's so much less stressful. Finally, the left node, adaptability and the social milieu.
The social milieu is the culture of the world you operate in, the public perception, the regulatory mood, the ecosystem of your competitors. And adaptability is simply your team's capacity to flex when that public mood shifts.
So how do the inner coral reef and this massive outer ocean actually interact on a daily basis?
The primary argument here is that true governance requires paying acute attention to both simultaneously. You cannot just focus entirely on your internal team dynamics, perfecting your inner reflection loop, making sure everyone feels heard, and ignore the political or economic realities.
Because if you do, your perfectly harmonious team will just run out of funding or get shut down by an unhappy stakeholder.
Exactly.
Right. The healthiest coral reef in the world still dies if the water temperature suddenly boils.
Right. But conversely, you can't be so obsessed with the external points, steering only at the economics, the budgets, and the political wins, that you neglect the internal cycle of your team.
Right, because then the engine breaks down.
Yes. If you ignore the internal reflection and character building, your team will fracture and burn out under the pressure of those external demands. The larger diamond structure forces leaders to distribute their attention comprehensively. It literally provides a map for where to look when things feel stuck.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? We started this deep dive talking about the universal pain of being on a smart team that just falls apart when the pressure ramps up. The communication dies, that linear plan shatters, and everyone just retreats to their corners to point fingers.
It means that if you want to fix that dynamic, you really cannot rely on industrial-era command and control pyramids. You can't just try to draw a better linear map. You have to change the geometry of how you work.
You have to become a learning system, not just a delivery system. And I think the ultimate purpose of this diamond process cycle is profound, but actually quite simple. Every single cycle of work should leave both the project and the people involved better than they were before.
It's a high bar.
It is. But it's incredibly refreshing to see a governance model that treats human growth as a mandatory mechanism for success, not just some accidental byproduct.
Exactly. It treats professional maturity as a deliverable in and of itself. If you hit your financial targets and you deliver the software, but you completely destroy your team's trust and relational intelligence in the process, the diamond model would suggest you have actually failed in your governance.
Because you won't survive the next project.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to ask yourself, looking at your own professional life, is your team just a delivery system pushing widgets down the line? Or are you a learning system, taking the time to turn off the scoreboard, sit in the locker room, and actually reflect on the tape together?
This raises an important question, though, doesn't it? About where else this geometry applies beyond just corporate project management.
Oh, exactly. And that is what I want to leave you with to mull over today. Because the materials we explored explicitly frame this diamond process cycle for complex professional governance, navigating corporate projects, budgets, stakeholders. But what if we applied this exact geometry to our personal lives?
It is a really intriguing proposition.
Think about it. Imagine applying the cycle of task, implement, assess, reflect, and character to a marriage, or like a deep friendship, or even raising children.
Wow.
Right? What would personal governance look like if we treated our daily lives and our relationships as a cadence designed to build character, rather than just a linear checklist of chores and milestones to execute? If we took the time to step into that reflective space with our partners or our kids to figure out why a conflict happened, instead of just assessing the daily damage.
Checking the game tape of your life.
Exactly. Because the next time the pressure hits and the old linear map fails you, having that architecture of trust might just be the only thing that keeps you moving forward.